Good day. My name is David Wild, and this is the third part of a three-part lecture on Chapter 7 on managerial decision making from Connect Master Management 2.0. In this lecture, we're going to talk about challenges to both individual and to team decision making. First, let's focus on the challenges on the individual side. There are a number of challenges to decision making for which managers need to be prepared. The root cause of most barriers to individual decision making is that human beings do not possess the brain power for the rational and comprehensive examination and analysis of all the information that might be relevant to a problem and which might be necessary to arrive at the optimal solution in a reasonable amount of time. This limitation to our cognitive capacity is referred to as bounded rationality, and it has major implications for how we make decisions regarding the problems that we face. For example, to understand a complex problem and how it might be addressed, we have a natural tendency to filter out certain pieces of information or to oversimplify the situation. In fact, there are a number of non-conscious tendencies or mental shortcuts, referred to as heuristics, that humans use to simplify the task of processing information so that decisions can be made more quickly. These heuristics can result in quick and efficient decision making. However, as we describe next, decisions that result from the use of heuristics can also defy the laws of probability and logic, and thus reflect fairly predictable decision-making errors or biases, which refer to a tendency to make certain types of errors. Let's talk about these different heuristics. The first is the representative heuristic. The representativeness heuristic refers to the tendency to ignore information regarding the probability of an occurrence in favor of information that seems more representative or relevant to the situation. The availability heuristic reflects the human tendency to base judgments about the probability of an event on how easily the event can be recalled from memory of similar events. Confirmation bias occurs as a result of the tendency to seek, interpret, and recollect information in a way that supports the decision maker's position or preferences. And finally, escalation of commitment refers to a decision to maintain or increase commitment to a project or decision, despite clear evidence the project or decision has failed. In summary, in talking about the challenges to individual decision making, because individuals possess bounded rationality, they use mental shortcuts that simplify the decision-making process. The use of heuristics results in a fairly predictable set of biases and other problems that can hinder the effectiveness of decisions. The heuristics and biases that we discuss include the representative heuristic, the availability heuristic, confirmation bias, and the escalation of commitment. So finally, let's talk about the challenges to team decision making. Team decision making is complicated by group dynamics. That is, individual members share information as well as their opinions and judgments, and through the course of these interactions, team decisions are reached. There are several challenges to team decision making that arise from these factors. These challenges include groupthink, the Abilene Paradox, diffusion of responsibility, and social influence. First, let's talk about groupthink. As teams gain experience working together, they often develop a sense of oneness. To maintain this satisfying state, team members begin to focus more effort on maintaining harmony with other members and conformity to what members of the team feel is acceptable. This drive to maintain harmony and conformity manifests in groupthink, a pattern of thoughts and behaviors that collectively serve to hinder a team's ability to make effective decisions. How does groupthink result in poor decisions? Rather than offering alternative opinions or suggestions that might lead to better decisions, team members hold back so as to not upset other team members. As a result, there is a tacit push to accept consensus decisions, even in situations where making the absolute best decision is important. Now we'll talk about the Abilene Paradox. Have you ever gone along with your team on something only to learn later that no one really wanted to do so in the first place? If so, you have experienced the Abilene Paradox, a well-known team decision-making behavior in which individuals acting contrary to their own wishes are likely to experience negative feelings about the outcome. Diffusion of responsibility. Related to the Abilene Paradox, a more general team decision-making challenge occurs because of diffusion of responsibility, or the tendency of individual team members to withhold taking action because they believe others have done so or will do so. Diffusion of responsibility hinders team decision-making because team members presume that other team members have already gathered and weighed necessary information in reaching their judgments, and thus they are unlikely to agree or quickly acquiesce to other team members' judgments rather than working to reach their own. Finally, social influence. In many contexts, a team leader needs to understand recommendations of individual members in order to reach a final team decision. Unfortunately, social influence, or the change in behavior that results from interactions and relationships with others, can result in the application of inappropriate weights by the leader to team member recommendations. Now, several techniques can be used to aid in the problem-solving process. These include brainstorming, devil's advocacy, and the Delphi Method. Brainstorming involves team members meeting as a group, either in person or via a teleconferencing platform, to review a problem and to spontaneously generate ideas or solutions to the problem. Once the possible solutions are identified, the team evaluates the alternatives to come up with an acceptable solution. The concept of devil's advocacy can be an important technique in the group decision-making process. One possible solution to a problem are identified. One or more members of the team take on the role of devil's advocate, basically challenging the assumptions the group has made when it comes to solving a problem. This approach may actually force the team to rethink its approach to a problem and to look elsewhere for alternative solutions. The Delphi Method is a technique used by some groups to reach consensus without the influence of strong team members and the tendency to rush for a group decision at the end of a meeting. Using this method, a questionnaire is sent to members of the team. An administrator then tallies the results, and a second questionnaire is sent to the team based on the results of feedback obtained in the first round. Several rounds of questionnaires and resulting feedback help team members reach consensus based on the results of the previous rounds. So, in summary, talking about the challenges to team decision-making, although team members' judgments may be clouded by heuristics and biases, decision-making is further complicated because it involves member interactions and the integration of their judgments into team decisions. Because of the social element, problems such as groupthink, the Abilene Paradox, diffusion of responsibility, and social influence may result in decision-making errors made by teams. And finally, several techniques can be utilized by teams to overcome the challenges of group decision-making. These include brainstorming, devil's advocacy, and the Delphi Method. And that concludes our lecture on Chapter 7 on managerial decision-making.